Thank you for being here. We might feel that being on a meditation retreat, a monastic retreat, we may feel we're not doing much to alleviate or help the suffering in the world. It's my opinion that what we're doing now does make a difference, and it's one of the best things we can be doing, particularly keeping the precepts. If we think of the 5 precepts, and just take the first precept, and we can just use this as a recollection that if everybody in the world kept half of the first precept, i.e., not killing other humans, the world would be a very, very different place. So when we keep precepts and we practice and we do what we can to develop the wholesome mind and to purify the heart, that makes a difference. It's my belief that that makes a difference. That makes a big difference. It begins to tip the scales in the direction of goodness. So if we look at the world as a whole, we may not feel that. But I do believe that what we do now with just going inward and meditating and practicing, I do believe it makes a big difference, and perhaps it makes even a bigger difference than if we were to go out and do things externally. So that's why I say thank you for being here. I do believe this is a worthy endeavor. Thank you for showing an interest as well. So in the meditation, we can contemplate dependent origination, and we had some contemplation of some thoughts about that last night. And I thought to go into that a little bit more, and particularly just going into that word vijnana again, the etymology of that word consciousness, literally meaning divided knowing. And how is it divided? It's divided by the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Each of these 6 sense bases have their respective consciousnesses. And we say that there is the I, there are forms, there is I consciousness. The meeting of those 3 is eye contact. There is the ear, there are sounds, there is ear consciousness. The meeting of those 3 is ear contact. There is the nose, there are odors, there is nose consciousness. The meeting of those 3 is nose contact. There is the body, there is body There is the body, there is tactile sensation, there is body consciousness. The meeting of those three is body contact. There is the tongue, there are tastes, there is tongue consciousness. The meeting of those three is tongue contact. There is the mind, there are thoughts, mental objects. There is mind consciousness. The meeting of those three is mind contact. So there we have a further description of the six sense bases leading to contact in the form of dependent origination. And talked a bit last night about consciousness always landing somewhere, so that eye consciousness landing on forms, ear consciousness landing on sounds, and so on. And that consciousness is always landing somewhere. And that the point that in the Mahayana they say a thought produce a thought, nowhere supported. Or in the Theravada we would say, where does consciousness find no footing? Or where does consciousness not land and the four elements find no footing? So that would be the point of liberation. That would be when the consciousness doesn't land anywhere, and the disbanding of the cycle of dependent origination. So we use that as a contemplation, as a reflection. Just to encourage ourselves, prod ourselves a bit, and keep ourselves on the path. So moving on from that contemplation, consciousness is always landing somewhere, but it's not just randomly landing. It is being directed. It is being directed. So who's directing it? This is something I've thought of for myself, actually calling it the director. Who is directing the eye to notice certain forms and not notice other forms? Who is directing the ear consciousness to land on certain sounds and not other sounds? So this is where the teachings on craving and clinging come into play. We could say that there are these root defilements of attraction, aversion, delusion. We can think of delusion as identification. For example, a memory comes up, and it may be an unpleasant memory. We take it as ours, which means we identify with it. We take it as ours. It's something that happened to us, perhaps in the past, so we take it to be ours. And there may be pain and suffering associated with that memory, and it's compounded by the sense of identification. So, and because that memory is coming up, then the director, i.e. the identification, is causing us to focus on it more and more. Or take the example of a pleasant memory. A pleasant memory that causes us to smile inside. That's something pleasant, pleasurable, nice that happened in the past. So the director might say, I want more of that. And so we focus on ways that we might be able to create situations where we have more of that pleasantness that we had in the past. That's the attraction aspect. And it's kind of mysterious and unknowable why that director is there. But it is there, and this is just how things are working. And the director, the unfortunate part about all this, the director is directing us towards suffering. So when we talk about attraction, aversion, delusion, or attraction, aversion, identification, it's not a judgment because we all have this. This is very natural. It's very natural to have these things. But just because something is natural doesn't mean it's good for us. Many types of poison occur in nature that are natural, but we need to avoid them. Arsenic is natural. Cyanide is natural, but we avoid them. We don't go out and ingest them. So it's learning about these natural things that are natural but do end up leading us towards suffering. So the director directing us towards suffering, it's okay, it's not a judgment in that sense. But we do want what's best for ourselves. This is the beginnings of metta, of goodwill, loving kindness for oneself. We could say that no matter how much self-criticalness, no matter how much self-judgment and a self-critical nature we have, all of us can say we at least have metta for ourselves to the extent that we got ourselves to come on this meditation retreat. At least part of us does wish ourselves well. And we can capitalize on that. So this is coming into the path factor of right intention, samma sankappo. This is when we attempt to dethrone the old director and install a new director. There is an issue with this. The old director doesn't want to go. We can tell the old director you're fired, but he's not leaving, so we have to keep trying. The new director has to be stronger than the old director. So this is the Dhamma versus the developments. Who will win? At first, the Dhamma is going to be weaker, or the Dhamma teachings are going to be weaker than the defilements, so it's going to take training. When we first start out practicing, the image that comes up for me a lot is like a child getting into the ring with a champion boxer. Of course, he can't expect to win, but that child might look up at that boxer after getting knocked to the ground and almost dying. And he might look up and think, one day, I will beat him. And then he trains, and then he trains, and he trains, and he trains. And trains for many years. And might even overestimate himself, get back in the ring, and get knocked down again. So he trains, and he trains, and he trains. It's really what we have to do. The old inner tyrant in there doesn't want to be dethroned, doesn't want to be thrown out, but he's incredibly toxic, so we need to throw him out, do what we can. That's just an image. We don't want to cultivate anger. we don't it's just an analogy. Perhaps it's not a perfect analogy. We want to throw the tyrant out with loving kindness. Or we could say that loving kindness, goodwill undoes those energies that we want to transform in our heart and our mind. So we do that through Sila Samadhi Panya. We do that through precepts, virtue, meditation, practice, training the mind, and the cultivation of discernment, thinking about the Dhamma, mulling it over, coming to an understanding of it. Is it true or not? Looking into it. Sila is an inner quality. It's said that in the Theravada, Sila is not the precepts themselves. The precepts themselves are called Sikapadas, or training guidelines. Sila is the quality of heart that comes about through the keeping of the precepts. That inner quality of non-cruelty, non-harming. That's back to right intention again. And at first, when we keep the precepts, there may be resistance. Because the heart has that habit. The heart has habits that need to be retrained. So at first there's resistance, just like when that young boxer trains. There's resistance lifting the weights. This is resistance training. And it goes hand in hand with the cultivation of patient endurance, Kanti, Waton. Samadhi The Thai translation of samadhi is Tang Jai Man, literally means the firm establishing of the mind, or the firm establishing of the heart. Developing wholesome self-confidence and a sense of unshakability. So that whether we're thinking or not, or whether we are in the moment experiencing happiness or suffering, the heart isn't shaken by that. So there's a level of, I like to think of this as, there's a threshold of samadhi that we develop through our training, through our mind training. And that goes up over time. So that as we meditate, as we train the mind, train the heart, there is a baseline level of samadhi. And then when we sit in meditation or walk in meditation, that's more of a focused period where we can train that further. But then as we go about our daily lives, that will stay with us. We do still have samadhi, even when we're not engaged in our formal practice. It's still there. So the training isn't lost. Sometimes we might feel, oh, after that retreat, I went back to work and it's like I've never meditated before in my life. But actually, it is different. And one way we can notice that it's different is that we're noticing those mental states. So there's more mindfulness. We're noticing how things are for us. We're not just completely lost in unawareness, just blindly following our moods. We actually have more knowledge of what's happening. So that's mindfulness. And that goes with samadhi as well. We're able to catch our minds. We're able to know what's happening. We're able to know when we're suffering. So we're no longer unconsciously unconscious. We're more consciously unconscious. We know what's happening. So we've made progress. We become aware of when we're unaware. We become aware of when we're tripping up. So the training is taking hold. And it just takes time, so not to be too hard on ourselves. It's said in the Thai forest tradition, if we really do it, we really get it. If we really do it, we really get it. So whatever efforts we put into this retreat or this practice, it's not going to be lost. Those seeds have been planted. How healthy the plants will grow will depend on how much we tend to them, how much we water them. It's going to be a slow process, slow and sometimes painful process. And the results aren't going to be quick. Ajahn Chah said that wanting to have quick results when you're planting a tree is only going to result in more suffering. And we might see the tree sprout and then we might go and pull on it thinking, I want it to be taller, I want it to be bearing fruit. But that'll only do harm to it. So the more patience we have, the healthier that young tree is going to grow at its own pace. And everybody's tree is going to grow at its own pace. And sometimes the trees that grow the slowest end up living the longest and being the strongest. That's really where patience comes in. Watering it with mindfulness, with the good fertilizer of sila, of virtue. tended with care and patience, eventually the tree can bear the Bodhi fruit. And we don't create that fruit, we just tend the tree. That's our job. So thank you for being here. Thank you for training. Thank you for doing this practice. And we'll continue to sit for about 15 more minutes and transition to walking meditation.
Thank you for listening. To learn how you can support the teachers and Dharma Seed, please visit dharmaseed.org.